The escape pod shrieked, a tortured metal scream against the endless blue sky. It was a sound that seemed to tear through the very fabric of the serene desert, a harbinger of chaos in an otherwise tranquil expanse. It slammed into the dunes, sending up a spray of sand that painted the horizon a hazy yellow. The impact was so violent that it felt as if the earth itself had shuddered, momentarily disturbed from its ancient slumber. Kaya coughed, struggling against the harness that pinned her to the pilot's chair. The straps dug into her shoulders, a painful reminder of the crash's ferocity. She could feel the heat of the desert seeping into the cabin, mingling with the acrid smell of burnt electronics. Her head throbbed in time with the dying whine of the engine. Each pulse of pain was a stark contrast to the eerie silence that now enveloped the wreckage. She reached up, gingerly touching a tender spot on her temple, her fingers coming away sticky with blood. She was alive. That was the important part. Despite the pain and the disorientation, she had survived the crash. But survival was just the first step. She needed to assess her situation, find out if there were any other survivors, and figure out a way to signal for help. Staggering out into the blinding sunlight, Kaya shielded her eyes. The sun was merciless, a blazing orb that seemed to mock her plight. She squinted, trying to make out the details of her surroundings through the shimmering heat waves. Sand stretched in every direction, rippling waves of ochre and gold beneath a relentless sun. The vastness of the desert was overwhelming, a stark reminder of her isolation. Each dune looked like a mountain, each shadow a potential hiding place for danger. Her gaze fell upon the wreckage of the transport ship, a mangled carcass spitting flames against the endless blue. The sight was both mesmerizing and horrifying, a testament to the violence of the crash. She could see pieces of the ship scattered across the sand, like the bones of some ancient beast. No survivors. Hope withered within her. The realization hit her like a physical blow, leaving her breathless. She was alone in this vast, unforgiving desert, with no one to help her, and no way to call for rescue. A flicker of movement on the dunes caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a mirage, a trick of the heat and light, but as she focused, she realized it was real. Something, or someone, was out there. A figure, tall and draped in flowing robes, stood silhouetted against the sun. The figure's presence was both ominous and intriguing, a beacon of hope and a potential threat all at once. They approached, their features obscured by a veil of shimmering fabric. The way they moved was almost ethereal, gliding over the sand with an ease that seemed impossible in such harsh conditions. Fear, sharp and cold, gripped Kaya's heart. She had no idea who this person was, or what their intentions might be. In her weakened state, she knew she was vulnerable, and the thought of being at the mercy of a stranger was terrifying. She was stranded, alone, at the mercy of whatever inhabited this desolate world. The desert stretched out around her, an endless expanse of nothingness, and she felt a crushing sense of isolation. The figure stopped a few paces away, their voice a low, melodic rumble that seemed to resonate in Kaya's bones. The sound was strangely comforting despite the circumstances, and she found herself drawn to it. "You trespass!" The words hung in the air, heavy with an unspoken threat. The tone was calm, almost gentle, but the underlying menace was unmistakable. Kaya swallowed, her throat dry. My ship!" Words failed her. She wanted to explain, to plead for help, but the fear and the dryness in her mouth made it impossible to form coherent sentences. The stranger tilted their head, a gesture that seemed both curious and condescending. It was as if they were trying to decide whether Kaya was worth their time, whether she posed any threat or held any value. This planet offers sanctuary to no one. The finality of the statement was chilling. Kaya realized that she was truly alone, with no allies and no safe haven. The desert was her only companion, and it was a harsh, unforgiving one. Kaya spent the next few days in a haze of fear and exhaustion. The relentless sun beat down on her, and the endless expanse of sand seemed to stretch on forever. Each step felt like a monumental effort, her body screaming for rest, but her mind driven by the need to survive. She had no idea where she was or how she had ended up in this desolate place. The nights were no better, filled with strange sounds and shadows that played tricks on her weary mind. The stranger, who identified themselves only as Ashan, brought her water and strange but edible fruits. The fruits were unlike anything she had ever seen, with vibrant colors and an otherworldly taste. Despite her initial hesitation, hunger and thirst won out, and she accepted the offerings. Ashan's presence was both a relief and a source of anxiety. Who were they, and why were they helping her? They spoke little, their interactions strained with mistrust. Kaya couldn't shake the feeling that Ashan was hiding something. Every question she asked was met with vague answers or silence. The tension between them was palpable, each wary of the other's intentions. Yet in this vast, empty desert, they had no choice but to rely on each other. Kaya learned that she was on Etheria, a planet long forgotten on the fringes of charted space. The name stirred something in her memory, a faint recollection of stories told by star travelers. Etheria was a place of legend, a world that had once been vibrant and full of life, but was now reduced to a barren wasteland. Ashan, she discovered, was no mere desert dweller, but their ruler. This revelation added another layer of complexity to their relationship. Why would a ruler be wandering the desert alone? What had happened to their people? The questions swirled in Kaya's mind, but Ashan offered no answers. One evening, as the sky blazed with the colors of a dying sun, Ashan led her to the crest of a dune. The view was breathtaking, the sky painted in hues of orange, pink, and purple. For a moment, the beauty of the scene made her forget the harshness of their reality. It was a fleeting respite, a reminder of what Etheria might have once been. Below, nestled in a valley, lay the ruins of a city, its towers reaching for the sky like skeletal fingers. The sight was both awe-inspiring and heartbreaking. The city had once been a beacon of civilization, now reduced to rubble and decay. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the consequences of hubris. "This was once our home," Ashan said, their voice barely a murmur. Before the cataclysm, the weight of their words hung in the air, heavy with sorrow and regret. Kaya could feel the pain in Ashan's voice, a deep, abiding grief for what had been lost. Kaya felt a chill crawl down her spine. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. The enormity of the situation was beginning to sink in. This wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Ashan turned away, their gaze fixed on the ruined city. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and unanswered questions. Kaya could sense that the story was too painful for Ashan to recount, but she needed to know. She needed to understand what had brought them to this point. "Our ancestors sought knowledge beyond their understanding," Ashan finally said, their voice tinged with bitterness. They delved into mysteries that were better left untouched, driven by a thirst for power and enlightenment. But some doors, once opened, can never be closed. They unleashed a power that poisoned our world, turning it into this. Ashan gestured at the desolate landscape, their eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. The cataclysm had not only destroyed their civilization, but had also left the planet itself scarred and lifeless. They gestured at the desolate landscape. "We are all that remain." The weight of those words settled heavily on Kaya's shoulders. The realization that she was standing among the last remnants of a once great civilization was almost too much to bear. Kaya stared at the ruins, her heart heavy with a sorrow that wasn't her own. She felt a deep connection to this place and its people, a bond forged through shared suffering and loss. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the ruins, she vowed to help Ashan rebuild, to restore some semblance of hope to this forsaken world. Life on Etheria was harsh, a constant struggle for survival. Kaya, with her knowledge of technology, found herself surprisingly useful. She helped Ashan repair broken water purifiers and scavenged parts from the wreckage of her ship. Slowly, grudgingly, a bond began to form between them. One day, while exploring the ruins, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber. Inside, amidst dusty scrolls and strange artifacts, lay a crown. It was crafted from a metal that shimmered with an inner light, its surface etched with intricate symbols. Ashan froze, their hand hovering over the crown. The crown of Etheria, they whispered. Kaya had never seen Ashan so vulnerable. What is it? She asked softly. Ashan picked up the crown, their fingers tracing the symbols. Legend says it grants the wearer the power to control the elements. It was lost during the cataclysm. Their voice was tight with emotion. Some believe it holds the key to restoring Etheria. As the days turned into weeks, Kaya found herself drawn to Ashan's quiet strength and the sadness that lingered in their eyes. She had always been curious about the enigmatic figure who had saved her life in the desert, but it was the unspoken sorrow that truly captivated her. Each day she observed Ashan's actions, their silent resilience, and the way they carried the weight of an untold story. One night, beneath a sky ablaze with 1,000,000 stars, she finally asked the question that had been burning on her tongue. The stars seemed to hold their breath, as if the universe itself was waiting for Ashan's response. The desert around them was silent, the only sound the soft whisper of the wind. "What happened to your people, Ashan?" Her voice was gentle yet insistent, carrying the weight of her concern and curiosity. Ashan stiffened, their gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The question seemed to pull them back into a past filled with pain and regret. For a moment, Kaya feared she had overstepped, but then Ashan began to speak, their voice barely above a whisper. The cataclysm was not a natural disaster, they said, their voice low and strained. It was a rebellion. The words hung heavy in the air, laden with the weight of 1,000 untold stories. Kaya listened intently, her heart aching for the pain that Ashan had endured. "My own brother, driven by ambition, unleashed the power that destroyed our world." Kaya gasped, the revelation hitting her like a physical blow. She had known there was more to Ashan's story, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. He sought the crown of Etheria, believing it would give him dominion over our people. Ashan's voice trembled with the memory of betrayal. The crown was a symbol of ultimate power, and in his quest to obtain it, Ashan's brother had doomed their entire civilization. Ashan turned to her, their eyes filled with a pain that cut Kaya to the core. She could see the depth of their suffering, the scars that went far beyond the physical. It was a pain that had shaped them, defined them, and now it was being laid bare before her. "I was forced to stop him, but the cost—" Ashan's voice broke, the weight of their actions pressing down on them. Kaya could see the torment in their eyes, the struggle to reconcile their duty with the devastating consequences. They trailed off, their hand instinctively going to a scar that ran along their jaw, a pale line against their dark skin. It was a reminder of the battle they had fought, the sacrifices they had made. Kaya reached out, her fingers brushing against the scar, a silent gesture of understanding and solidarity. Etheria was lost, and I became the ruler of a graveyard. Ashan's words were filled with a profound sadness, a lament for a world that could never be restored. Kaya stood beside them, feeling the weight of their shared loss, and in that moment she vowed to help Ashan find a way to heal the scars beneath the stars.